What's a real-life glitch you've experienced that you still can't explain? Story 1. I dreamt I was on a train that crashed. The guy in front of me was decapitated, and the train car caught on fire before plunging off a bridge into the water. I drowned, woke up in a panic, realized I wasn't dead, and fell back asleep. Had the exact same dream, and again and again. The next day, dragging my tired butt into work, wondering why my mind decided to play a dream like a bad VCR. I passed the volunteer desk at work with its daily pile of newspapers. The evening before, a train had crashed before plunging off a bridge into a river. Later, it came out the crash produced some horrific injuries, including decapitation. Story 2. I'm not the kind of person to have a great many friends, but those friends I do keep are sacred to me. So one evening, I was getting out of a Rotterdam subway to go to my apartment near there, when I see an old friend, one I haven't seen in the flesh in a few years, heading into the subway. I call out his name, and he turns, waves, and makes this "call me" gesture. Then the doors close, and the subway rides off. 30 seconds later, my phone rings. It was my friend, who told me he'd just seen me get on the normal train he'd used to get home from the bar. Apparently, I had grinned, waved, gestured, "call me," the door shut, and the train drove off. I lived in Rotterdam, he lived in Amsterdam. That's just over 200 kilometers apart, or about 125 miles. Story 3. This happened about 6 years ago. I and 3 other friends went to a concert at the biggest venue in Mexico City. One of my friends is a woman, that is important for the story, so the concert ended and we agreed on a meetup point outside the venue so we could pick a cab and leave together. There were about 100,000 people there, so we inevitably got separated. So we went to the meetup point. We waited for my friend for about 15 minutes when we started to get worried, so we start calling her phone. However, due to the sheer amount of people present at the venue trying to make phone calls, the lines get congested and the calls won't go out or they won't be received, so we started to get really worried. After another 10 minutes of trying to call her, I get a phone call from her. She sounded extremely gloomy and sad. She said, "Hey Sebastian, I'm alright. I'm already at my place. Everything's okay." I got immediately freaked out as this was impossible. She lived 2 hours away and not even an hour had gone by. We got super freaked out and tried to call her and start flagging some cops down, because being Mexico City, I thought she had been kidnapped. Then 30 seconds after the call, she comes out of the crowd looking as chilled as she could possibly look. I yell at her, telling her what the hell was wrong with her, etc, etc. The thing is, she looked so surprised at this. She denied having made any phone calls. She tried but couldn't get a signal. We don't believe her, so we look at her phone and there was no record of the call having been made. After this, I take my phone to show her the call and there was no record of the call having been received either. To this day, I have no idea what happened, because the voice on the other end of the phone was hers, and she knew the details about me and my name. Story 4. In high school, I did archery, and one day at shooting practice, one of the new kids shot a bullseye exactly, dead center. This isn't that remarkable. You fire enough arrows, sooner or later one of them will be a bullseye. But everyone was being nice and congratulating him. Suddenly, a voice in my head, which sounded like me, but didn't feel like me, said, "Yeah, but Lynn's about to do the same thing." I could see in my mind's eye Lynn firing an arrow, it flying through the air and hitting a dead center bullseye. Then maybe 3 or 4 seconds later, I watch as Lynn fires an arrow, and it flies in exactly the trajectory I had seen in my head, and lands with a thwack. Bullseye. Everyone is over-congratulating Lynn now. She was new too, and I'm standing off to the side wondering what the fuck just happened. It happened one more time a month or 2 later too. I saw something happen in my head exactly as it did a few seconds later. I've forgotten the details of the second time though, and it's never happened since. Story 5. My mom told me this. My parents' bedroom was this really large master closet. It was technically just one closet, but it had 2 doors going into it. Between the 2 doors were a high shelf and a hanging rod for clothes, so it functioned like 2 separate walk-in closets, but you could walk from one to the other by ducking under any clothes hung in the middle. One night she was in her side of the closet and she saw through the gap between the shelf and the clothes rod my dad walk into his side of the closet. She heard the metal coat hanger sliding as he looked for something to wear and saw the clothes in the middle sway as they were brushed from the other side. From her side of the closet, she started talking to him about something random. Then she heard the bathroom door open. She poked her head out of the closet to see my dad clearly just emerging from the shower. Walked to look into his side of the closet, and nothing. And up until the moment she poked her head out to look at the bathroom door, she will swear to you she could still see my dad in that closet. Story 6. I forgot about this until I read this post, but it's something I still don't understand. It was summer, and my grandfather, grandmother, mom, and I were working in the garden. It's pretty big and there's a lot of grass to be mowed and stuff like that. After all the work, my mom would always ask me to get some soda because everyone was thirsty from working. It was in the evening, but still pretty warm. After everyone had their soda, my mom asked me to put it back in the fridge, which was in the basement, used as a living area, only a small part in storage. So I go to the basement, and please note, the room with the fridge is still like 20 to 30 seconds from the exit, and you have to pass 2 doors with those flappy anti-fly curtains. I put the soda in the fridge, close the fridge, and walk out. Seems normal, right? Except I had to do this 3 times. The soda kept reappearing whenever I put it in the fridge and turned my back on it. Everyone was outside, and there was only 1 bottle of soda in the room. To this day, I am still confused about what happened. There have probably been more moments like this, but this is the one I remember the most. I must have had a poor connection to the server. Story 7. One morning I woke up, rolled out of bed, brushed, had breakfast as usual, and then went about my day off. I lounged around the house a little bit and played my Nintendo DS for a bit, planked away on my guitar. A lazy morning. Suddenly I'm driving in my car a couple of towns over on my way to the B&N. I pulled over and tried to collect my thoughts. I remembered waking up and getting ready, watering plants, cleaning my stuff up in the living room, then hopping in my car. But I also remember doing all of the stuff from that other version of that morning. So I had 2 separate days that suddenly merged into one and kept both memories. Story 8. When I was about 13 or 14, I went on a trip to another state with my church youth group. We drove through the country for hours in a region I had never been to before. Eventually, we ended up in a small town. I was looking out the window and I realized I knew this town as if I had lived there before. Like, I knew the post office would be a few blocks ahead on the right, and then sure enough, there it was. Weirder, I knew what the buildings would look like. I predicted the locations of all the landmarks in the town before we were close enough to see them, and all of the predictions were correct. It was very spooky and got the other kids in the bus a little riled up. Story 9. When I was young, maybe 7, after my mom got a divorce from my dad, we lived in this creepy apartment. I think kids have a sense of creepy shit, and I think I knew from the start that something was off about this apartment. A little backstory, and probably part of why it always creeped me out. My mom got a really good deal on it because she agreed to fix it up a little. Nothing crazy, just basically cleaning out the stuff the old tenant had left and slapping some fresh paint on the walls. The previous tenant had vanished one day. The owner said that rent time came and went and the tenant never paid. So after calling numerous times, they finally went into the apartment. The tenant was gone, but left all of their stuff. So the way this apartment was set up, when you entered the front door, a stairway was immediately to your left, a door to a bedroom immediately to your right, and then straight ahead was a hallway with an open living room and kitchen at the end. So if you're standing in the doorway, you can see into the bedroom, up the stairs, and into the living room. Once you enter the living room, you can see the full kitchen. One day I was playing a computer game in the downstairs bedroom and started to get hungry. I walked out of the bedroom, calling for my mom as I walked down the hallway. No answer. When I rounded the corner into the kitchen, she wasn't there. I went back down the hallway and started up the stairs, but as I was about halfway up, I felt a really creepy feeling and decided to go back down the stairs, all the while still calling for her. At the bottom of the stairs, I opened the front door and called for her with no response. Went back down the hall to open the sliding glass back door. This was an apartment complex, so we had no backyard, just a little deck. Nothing. Panicking, I went back down the hall toward the original bedroom I was in, trying to figure out what to do. I decided to grab the phone to call someone, walked back down the hall to get it, and there stands my mother, cooking dinner in the kitchen. When I asked her where she'd been, she said she'd been there the whole time. I didn't ask why she didn't answer when I was calling for her or if she saw me opening the back door, and she said no. It's been probably about 15 or so years and I still think about this incident periodically. That apartment was creepy as f***. Like, the day we moved out, we found this hidden room type thing disguised by a vent cover that we'd never seen in there 2 years we lived there. I had recurring nightmares of the same man. And there were a few times our front door either wouldn't lock or we'd get up in the morning to it standing open. So glad we didn't live there for longer than we had to. Story 10. When I was about 11 years old, I was playing with my younger sister and 2 friends at the bottom of their garden. It was a semi-rural area and there was a cow field that stretched away for about a mile and then there was a motorway. There was no visual change in our surroundings, yet suddenly the cow stopped making any sound at all and we couldn't hear the traffic in the motorway, which was usually constant. We all froze as we sensed something. The air felt heavy, as if it was pushing down on us, and we all felt prickly heat in any exposed skin. It lasted a good 10 seconds and then stopped as fast as it had started. The cows went crazy and the traffic sounds returned. We all agreed we felt it. I wonder what strange weather systems were at play that day. Story 11. Once in college, some friends and I drove out of the city and down a country road in a secluded area, so we could smoke pot and cruise around. Didn't really have a secure place to smoke near campus, and we were dumb enough to think it was safer in a moving vehicle. So after nightfall, we are on our way headed back to town, and it seems out of nowhere we are in this massive traffic jam on this country road. There are tons of cars in front of us and even cars trying to pass on the shoulder. Cars were racing past going the other way, which really didn't lead anywhere. There just seemed to be a kind of pandemonium, like we were driving around a sports stadium after a game. There were no lights from a police car or fire truck, no evidence of a crash, nothing. We were literally screaming because it was so weird. It all came out of nowhere. It was a 2-lane road that didn't lead anywhere, yet there were tons of cars jammed up. Then it just seemed like all the cars were gone. The traffic let up and we were cruising along again. But I don't remember seeing cars in front of us or behind us anymore. It was like we were alone on the road. We lost it and couldn't stop talking about it for like a week. I'd like to say it was a glitch, but it's probably because we were smoking some good stuff. Story 12. Story. One day I was driving with my son, 3, and daughter, infant. Son was in a car seat all the way in the back of my van. The daughter was in the middle. I know my son had boots on because there was no snow on the ground, so I tried to put his shoes on and he screamed bloody murder until he got boots. We went directly to the van. When we got to our destination, a grocery store less than 10 minutes away, he no longer had boots on. Now keep in mind that the windows in the back of my van don't open at all. Neither do the windows in the middle. Only the ones in the front, and since it was winter, I definitely didn't open those. After a quick search in the parking lot with no results, we obviously had to go back home, because he couldn't walk around the store in socks. When we got back home, I searched the car properly. After about 20 minutes, it wasn't even about getting to the grocery store. It was the principle of the thing. I was going to find those goddamn boots. I removed the car seats and entire seats from the van. I searched every possible space I could access, let alone my strapped-in 3-year-old. I even searched everywhere between the spot I put his boots on and the car. I never found those goddamn boots. Story 13. A friend of mine and I used to joke about how our backpacks had black holes, which were why we could put all our stuff in them. A good while into this, we found each other's stuff in our backpacks. This happened multiple times too. After it kept happening, we reasoned that it was most likely that we were dropping our stuff into the other's backpack without noticing. But the chances of that were lower than the frequency at which it was happening. What really screamed at me that something was wrong was when 3 of his pens and his pen collection ended up not in my backpack, but in the pocket of my jacket weeks after he lost them. I like to think that whenever we come to agree upon something, it'll happen. Which is why I'm glad we both also joke about and discuss becoming gods in our plans when we do. Unfortunately, these occurrences have ceased lately, so I guess the magic is worn. Story 14. I had an abusive childhood. One time in middle school, I had a friend over, a very rare occurrence for me. My friend and I were about to enter the house and go up to my room. Now the door we were going through connected to the laundry room, which has the washer and dryer like right in front of the door. So if you're doing laundry, sometimes the door will hit you. I had a premonition, nothing else to call it. I put my hand on the door handle and a premonition of the exact words and way my stepmother would scream at me the moment I opened the door. I turned to my friend and said, "When I open this door, my mom will be there, and she will be very upset." It looked super confused, but sure enough, I opened the door and she yelled and screamed at me exactly the way I saw. Then we both ran up to my room. I don't believe in the supernatural or religion, the occult, ghosts, or anything like that at all. But anytime I start to get 100% atheistic neckbeard in my own head, I remember that and it makes me think. It's not bulletproof because she had yelled at me for that several times, but I'll never forget the absolute certainty I had at the moment of what exactly was about to happen. I've never been more certain of anything in my life since. Weirded my friend out too. Story 15. Went out of state to a casino with my family. The casino had 2 floors. It kind of looked like a mall. You could see the top floor just by looking up, and you got to the top floor by using an escalator. The bathroom was on the top floor and my mom went to the bathroom alone. She was gone for about 15 minutes before I went looking for her. I checked the restroom and she wasn't in there. The rest of my family, 5 people, spread out to look for her and met back by the escalator and no one could find her. I was holding her phone for her so I couldn't call her. I saw a suspicious-looking man standing by the ladies' room the entire time we were looking, and I thought maybe he killed her and stuffed her in the trash, or maybe he killed her in the men's room. I'm irrational when I'm in panic mode, so I checked there too. Finally, after another few minutes, my mom comes down the escalator looking zoned out. I was so relieved to see her. She was tripping out because she said she took the escalator and it took her to another building across the street, and then back to where we were even though she got on the right escalator. I swear, there were only 2, one going up and another going down. The crazy part was that the buildings weren't even connected at all. Story 16. We'll never understand this for as long as I live. In high school, I liked to wake up early in the morning so I'd have time to eat breakfast, watch TV, maybe do some last-minute homework and relax before I begin my day. I always set my alarm for 6 a.m. So that morning, as my usual phone alarm went off, I grabbed my phone to turn it off. I distinctly remember reading a text message from a friend who was an early riser like me, asking me, did I want to grab fried rice later that night with the rest of our friends? He sent this at 5:39 a.m. It was still September, so the sun was always up at this hour. I got out of bed and immediately hopped in the shower. When I got out, I headed down to the kitchen to brew coffee and make some breakfast. While I was waiting on the coffee pot to heat up, I ran back to my room to grab my phone. When I looked down at my phone, I just about croaked. The time on the phone read 3:30 a.m. To make matters worse, I looked outside and the sun wasn't even up yet. What's even weirder was I never had even received that text from my friend. I just sat there bewildered and frustrated, running through the chain of events from that morning over and over again. I eventually made my way back to the kitchen. Seeing that I was wide awake now, I didn't need coffee anymore. I stayed up the rest of the morning, not even trying to attempt to sleep again. Later that morning, something even stranger happened. At 5:39 a.m., I received a text message from my friend. I spent a lot of time over the years trying to decipher the events from that morning. All I know is that somehow I woke up in the future and my shower took me back to the present. Can anyone relate to this? Story 17. I used to have these very vivid dreams that were all part of an overall story. They took place in an alternate universe with magic and demons and shit. Myself and some friends, these people weren't real, mind you, were freedom fighters in the war. The dreams were never in order and I wrote them down after waking up, figuring out where they were placed in the timeline by taking note of particular details. For instance, in some of the dreams I was always alone and was incredibly powerful. In others, I was pretty much just an average kid and had all those friends around me as we snuck around trying to rescue POWs. One night I had a particularly dark dream where one of my friends, his name was Luke, was sitting on a rooftop threatening to jump. I went up there to try to talk him out of it, and we ended up having a long conversation about how he couldn't see the point in fighting anymore, now that she's dead. So this was pretty surprising. The she that was being referred to was his girlfriend Maddie. In the later dreams in the timeline, she was never there, so this sort of explained why she disappeared from the dreams. That was during the Christmas break in 2009. When school started in 2010, I met Maddie for the first time when she started at my school. She looked exactly the same, had the same laugh, the same mannerisms, and everything. I definitely had never met her before, and yet there she was. Not just alive, but actually f***ing real. Story 18. I have two. One time, both me and my sister were sitting in my living room, and then all of a sudden, she just freezes and asks me if she sees that black thing on the street. I said no, and then I blinked, and it was an experience I never want to feel again. The TV went silent. Everything around me went silent, and all I could hear was my sister yelling that he was coming closer. I looked back on the street, and sure enough, there was a shadowy person walking towards us. Then everything stopped and went back to normal. One time I was at work just counting money. We were required to listen to the local AM radio station, which plays country music mostly and Twins games when they were on. I was counting money, and all of a sudden, Don't Worry, Be Happy starts playing. I like the song, so I start jamming to it while counting money. Then it plays again. I start getting a little skeptical, but I roll with it. Then it plays again and again. I contact one of my friends who works at the radio station and was like, what the f***? He was working at the time. He controls what gets played, and he said that's not even on their playlist.